Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big winter storm for portions of the middle Mississippi Valley and then back through into portions of the mid-Atlantic. Some of these areas could be picking up as much as 6 inches of snowfall, and areas in Virginia and North Carolina could be seeing their first snowfall of the season, or at least their first significant snowfall of the season. We'll have my first call snowfall forecast for this, and I'll probably have another updated snowfall forecast for portions of North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky probably by tomorrow. So I'll still have another updated version. This is just my first call forecast, so it will be my my preliminary forecast, if you will. So let's get right into it here, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. We have some winter weather advisories in those purples, and then the winter storm warnings are in the pink for portions of the Northwest. We also have some high wind warnings in effect for parts of Wyoming, and some high wind watches in effect for parts of Montana there, as well as some more wind related alerts for portions of the western United States, just kind of dotted around portions of the West. And then we have some winter weather advisories also for portions of Tennessee and North Carolina, as well as Virginia there, and that's all from that system that's going to be upcoming. I wouldn't be surprised if they do add a couple more, let's say back here through Missouri, and then also into portions of Virginia and North Carolina a little bit further to the east there. But other than that, we don't have a lot else going on in terms of watches and warnings. Most of the activity is up through the Northwest, except for this one storm that's going to be moving southeastward into portions of the Mid-Atlantic. So here's the current European model run, and we're going to just take this through, and we're going to zoom in on this area. We gave you the snowfall forecast for the northern plains yesterday, so now we're going to kind of focus in here for portions of the Tennessee Valley and the Mid-Atlantic. We have that system coming in from the west, and that's going to start to enter into Missouri, Arkansas, right around Wednesday night. So this would be right around, or Wednesday early afternoon. This would be right around 12 p.m. tomorrow, and we're looking at some of that rain entering western Missouri, western Arkansas, and then back through further to the west. And then as you continue this forward, you might start to see that in some of the Ozarks of Missouri, and in the Ozarks of Missouri and Arkansas, you might start to see a little bit of mixing or even snow get into there, probably right around 6 p.m. as the sun is going down, and as it starts to really cool down. It will still be 35 or 36 degrees, but you might still be able to get a little bit of snow out of this one. And then this is going into a colder air mass that's east of the Appalachians. So east of the Appalachians, we're going to have a wedge of cold air. So we're going to have warmer air out into the Tennessee Valley, but then we're going to have colder air on the other side of the Appalachians. It's a very common setup, and what's going to happen is that this system, which I'll draw in pink, is going to slide further to the south, and it's going to be on that northern end. Potentially, some snow could form over some of these regions, and that's going to be the biggest story with this event. So as we move this forward, you start to see some of that snow and mixing precipitation does move a little bit further to the north. How much accumulation you're going to see is something that's going to be still unknown a little bit, because some of that will melt right at contact with the surface, because your temperatures will be right around 34 or 35 degrees. They won't be fully at freezing for most of these areas. So although you might still be seeing snow overnight, it's not going to all be sticking. You will still get some accumulation, but I don't think all of it necessarily will be sticking. And as we continue this forward, you continue to see that over Missouri, Illinois, and then getting through into Kentucky and Indiana by this point. This would be by Thursday, right around 12 p.m. Central Time. We're looking at some of that snow and even a little bit of mixing moving through there. But the main story by this point is some of that colder air, again, setting up further to the east. It's going to be in the 40s on Thursday, so you do have, for high temperatures, so you will have a chillier atmosphere in place. But we are also going to be dealing with a little bit of severe weather down. You can't even see it on this picture, but further to the south of there into southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, Louisiana, southeastern Texas. Those areas could be dealing with some slight severe weather. It won't be a lot of severe weather. They only have a marginal risk out for a small area in Texas and Louisiana, so it's not the biggest deal in the world, although definitely just kind of keep that in mind if you are going to be traveling about. You might see a couple downpours here and there in Louisiana and Texas. And then moving this forward, you start to see that by 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, we have some of that snow for western North Carolina, northeasternmost Georgia, and then more of that snow back through Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. I think on the back end, although the snow might be lighter, you will still be getting accumulation because you will be closer to 32, probably 33, 32, 31 degrees. So it will be closer to freezing. You will have a lot more accumulation on that back end as you get more of that cold air to press in. And then as you continue this forward, you start to see that some of that cold air wraps around on that northern end. This is something that I've seen on the models just today, where you're actually seeing some of that snow get into southern Kentucky, Tennessee. So I will leave the outside possibility that that does happen, although I'm not anticipating a lot of accumulation. You can see that 32-degree line is further to the north, back through into Kentucky and Indiana there. So how much accumulation you're actually going to see from this is still unknown. I think the temperatures will be closer to 35 degrees. So again, you're not going to see too much accumulation, probably just some flakes falling and not really accumulating to the ground. And then as we continue this forward, you start to see that by Friday, right around, this would be right around 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. on Friday morning, or right around 7 a.m. Eastern time, and we're looking at heavy snow for eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina as well, moderate to light snowfall. And then southern Virginia, you're just getting into some of that snowfall by this point. And then as we play this forward a little bit more, you start to see that we are dealing with, especially in the mountains of North Carolina, into western Virginia, and then back through even into western North Carolina in some of those lower elevations. You guys are also dealing with a little bit of snowfall. And then you start to see that snowfall does continue to head eastward. And what you're actually seeing, and if you're curious about why this is happening, is that we have rapid warming on that east side. So all this cold air that's up into the northeast is going to be displaced quickly further to the south. So that's what's happening right there. We have that low pressure over eastern North Carolina and still offshore over this general region. So we are going to be dealing with some of that cold air be plunged further to the south. So a little bit of that rain might switch over to some snowfall. This would be by Friday night, right around 7 p.m. Eastern time, and then here would be by 1 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Here's by 7 a.m. And as the sun starts to rise, you will go back to right around 30, 33, 34, 35. So the snow should cut off by that point, and it should start to warm. But you will still have some of that snow still on the ground, especially into western North Carolina, western Virginia, and some of the areas even further west and north of there. Now, here's the GFS model, and again, I kind of said the same thing yesterday, but I'm going to just repeat it for those of you who didn't watch yesterday's video. The GFS model does, with the upgrade that they did over the summer, you could call it an upgrade. It's much better with not depicting these massive storms longer term, but it now does have a lot more of a warmer bias. It does weaken storms a lot more than it used to, so you kind of have to take this with a grain of salt. And personally, I like the European model a lot more now, but you still want to look at the GFS. You still want to see what it's showing with this. But again, I think it will be colder and probably a lot wetter or snowier, depending on what side of the storm you're on, just based off what the GFS is showing. So take this with a grain of salt and kind of merge the two models, merge the European and the GFS, and you'll probably have a fairly good, accurate representation of what may happen. So we have one low pressure system down in Texas. We have another one that's trying to form up through into portions of Kansas, Nebraska, and also into South Dakota. So you can see how those isobars are getting elongated further to the north, and that's what's allowing some of that moisture to be all the way up here into North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska, even though your low pressure is all the way down there in Texas there. So here's that system continuing to move through, and then this would be by Wednesday morning. So tomorrow morning, we're dealing with some of that snow up through the northern plains start to die out a little bit, and we're actually dealing with a little bit of, again, some of that severe weather through portions of the southeastern United States, and that is going to continue there, and you're going to continue to see a little bit of severe weather. That low pressure moves down into eastern Texas or western Louisiana, and then you start to see some of that snow break out on the northern fringe of the system over Missouri, Arkansas, and into Tennessee there, and then you continue to see more of that system move further to the east. And then if we zoom in here, you start to see some of that snow pop up for portions of North Carolina, and then back through into Virginia by Friday morning. And then by Friday afternoon, this is when some portions of eastern North Carolina could be dealing with a little bit of snowfall. Most of the models are showing some sort of little burst of heavy snowfall overnight through interior eastern North Carolina, kind of within this region, and I think that's mainly again because we're gonna have cold air rushing in on that back end, so that might be why, and you might actually be able to get a little bit of accumulation out of that. That is very heavy snowfall right there if this is to actually be the case. So you are dealing with very heavy snowfall, maybe an inch or two per hour if this were to be correct. So you could definitely get a little bit of accumulation, especially because this will be happening either early in the morning or even at night. So you might be able to, without any of that sunlight covering it up, covering up the snowfall and kind of melting it away, you might be able to get a little bit more accumulation than you would in the daylight. And then it would be by Saturday, and then moving through the day on Saturday, you're dealing with the system really moving out of here. So here's what the European model is showing with snowfall. We're dealing with anywhere in those grays, under an inch to 2 inches, 2 to 6 inches in the blues, 6 to 10 inches in the purples, and then you even see a little bit of those pinks, which is about 10 to 15 inches of snowfall with a little bit more in those lighter pinks. And we're dealing with two main areas and main pockets of heavy snowfall, one for Missouri and Arkansas, and another one for the mid-Atlantic right there, and also the southern Appalachians. So these areas, I think you could cut these amounts in half and you would have a pretty good estimate of what may happen. And I think this is a better tool really to use as to show where's the heaviest snowfall going to be and how generally how much are you going to see. And I think if you cut these in half, you're getting, instead of 5 or 6 inches, you're getting 2 or 3 inches. I think that's a better estimate, and you'll see that more better represented when I show you my snowfall forecast at the end of the video. But you are looking at 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 inches in some isolated pockets throughout the mountains here and there in western North Carolina and into southwestern Virginia. And then again, another pocket there for Missouri and Arkansas. I know I have a couple viewers from there, so you guys could definitely be seeing 2 or 3 inches of snowfall potentially. Here's what the GFS model is showing with this event, and we're looking at much lighter accumulations, and I actually agree with the GFS a lot more with the mountain snowfall. I don't think it's going to be 6 inches, 7 inches of snowfall. I think it's going to be more 2 to 4 inches of snowfall, but I disagree with it here and also into eastern North Carolina. I think you might see a little bit more snowfall than what it's depicting there, so you'll also see that when I show you my snowfall forecast. Now, just to show you a couple different models here, here's the Icon model, the German model, and we're looking at that same pocket of snow near Missouri and Arkansas, as well as maybe a dusting of snow into Kentucky and Tennessee. This is not taking into account any melting that may happen. And then also that next pocket from eastern Kentucky and Tennessee into portions of western North Carolina and western Virginia, as well as southern West Virginia. You guys could also be dealing with a little bit of snowfall. Again, it's showing maybe 5 to 8 inches of snowfall on here. It's probably going to be lower, 2 to 4, maybe even 5 inches on that high end of snowfall, but it's definitely not going to be as high as you're seeing here. You might see a couple pockets over 6 inches, but I don't think the general amount will be 6 to 8 inches. And then here's what the this is what the UKMET model from England is showing here, and we're looking at again a pocket near Missouri and Arkansas, another pocket near the Mid-Atlantic where you're dealing with some snowfall there. So let's start talking about what I'm thinking with this storm. Again, this is going from Wednesday through Friday. This is not including whatever's happening in the northern plains. If you want my forecast for that, go check out yesterday's video. The forecast really didn't change too much for those areas. Under an inch of snowfall for Arkansas, Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana there, and then another area in that lighter blue or almost a white color there where you're looking at over Tennessee, North Carolina, even a little bit of Georgia and South Carolina there, and then back through into Virginia, Kentucky, and West Virginia. I'm looking at under an inch of snowfall, so this is where you could get a coating on some of the grassy surfaces, or maybe it just doesn't even stick too much, or you might even get a little bit of a slushy accumulation out of this one. Flakes possible anywhere in kind of that pink area, and this is where I don't think you'll get too much accumulation, even though in eastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia, they're showing a lot of snowfall. That's not really going to be too much of an accumulation. You're seeing a burst of snowfall that might be washed away right behind it. So overall in accumulation, I'm not expecting too much, although I will update this tomorrow, and there's still a possibility that I increase that to maybe under an inch, or maybe even an inch or so to 2 inches of snowfall. That's still definitely a possibility. I just want more model support that would show you're getting an actual accumulation instead of this just washing away or not even accumulating. Also, something you have to take into account, it's going to be 35 or 36 degrees in some of these cases. So how much snowfall you're actually going to be able to get is still, it's not going to be as much as you're actually seeing on some of these models. And then you see another area of flakes possible for Kentucky and Tennessee. And you could see some snowflakes flying around, although, again, I don't think it's going to accumulate too much. You might see a light dusting on some colder surfaces, however. 1 to 3 inches of snowfall for portions of southwestern Missouri, northwestern Arkansas, as well as another area for extreme northeastern Georgia, western North Carolina, western Virginia, southern West Virginia, and eastern Tennessee. That's where I'm looking at over an inch of snowfall, and this is where I think you could even get maybe 3 inches or even a little bit more of snowfall in some of these areas. And then 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. There's one band in Arkansas and Missouri, and another one in the southern Appalachians through into northwestern North Carolina, and then into southwestern Virginia. This is where I'm thinking it's going to be more 3 to 5 inches, maybe 3 to 4 inches of snowfall. You could see a couple mountain tops that get maybe 6 inches, maybe even 7 inches of snowfall, but generally I think it's going to be a 3 to 5 inch accumulation over these regions. And again, I am going to be making an updated snowfall forecast on this tomorrow, most likely. So this is not my final forecast. My final forecast will probably be either tomorrow or maybe even Thursday might be my final forecast. So there's still a couple of days here where I'm still going to be discussing this storm. And then eventually, I think maybe by Thursday or into Friday, I might start doing a little bit more of the long range, because we do have a very cold or snowy pattern upcoming, and I do want to talk about that with you guys. It is looking favorable if you like cold and snow over the eastern United States. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.